video I'm going to show you how to complete a 23-24 Type 2 form. So once you have downloaded your Type 2 form from the NHS Pensions website, then this is what it will look like. It's an Excel spreadsheet really that you need to complete. You can complete the form yourself, or you can obviously share with your advisor or accountant for them to complete on your behalf. You will see on the personal details tab, the first tab of the form, that it requires your name, your address and your email address, and then importantly your NHS pension scheme number, your national insurance number and your GMC number. Then you also enter PCSE in box D. For each different practice or solo provider that you worked for in 23-24, you need to enter the name, address and ODS code of the organisation and select whether it was salaried or solo role in the drop down under income type. You must not include the practices that you did any locum work for, and you can check your employee contribution statement on PCSE Online to confirm the correct ODS code. I'll show you how to do this a bit later. So just as a reminder, don't list any practices that you did any locum work for, and the Type 2 form is only for practitioner work. So if you had any officer roles in 23-24, then they must not be included. You select yes or no in box F to confirm if you had any authorised leave, so any maternity, paternity, adoption or sick leave, and then you select yes or no in box G to confirm if you had any added years, an added years contract in 23-24, and if you did, if it's a yes, then you enter the percentage in the box, and then we're ready to move on to the pay details tab. So you need to select the appropriate tier rate to calculate the contributions that you are due to pay for the pension year, and the tier rate's based on your annual pensionable income for all of your practitioner work. So this includes solo and locum work, if you have opted to pension the locum work by submitting locum A and B forms. So it includes the solo and locum work as well as your practice roles. And your income must be annualised where necessary. I'll talk a little bit about calculating the tier rate and annualisation later in this presentation. If you worked as a Type 1 GP for any part of the 23-24 year, then you need to enter the Type 1 income in box 1 of your Type 2 form, because that goes towards calculating the tier rate that needs to be applied. But remember, you need to submit a Type 1 certificate separately in that scenario if you were both a salaried GP for part of the year and a partner for part of the year. In box 2, this is where you enter the total pensionable pay from your practice role, and then in box 2A is where you enter the total employee contributions that the practice deducted from you in relation to the role. So you can get that figure from your month 12 payslip, and that will tell you what you've actually paid or had deducted from you in employee contributions for the year. And if you've selected the tier rate, then box 2B will populate with the difference between the contributions that you're due to pay for the year, the confirmed contributions, so that's based on your confirmed tier rate multiplied by what was your pensionable pay, and then the contributions that you've actually already paid that have been deducted by payroll. Now, if there is any underpayment or overpayment in contributions that you've made through payroll, then you need to liaise with the practice to confirm how they will collect the shortfall from you if you have underpaid, or how they will refund you if you have overpaid. And then box 2C is for the contributions that the employee contributions that the practice have paid over for you to NHS Pensions via NHS England in 23-24. This figure can be found on your employee contribution statement on PCSE Online, but it's not mandatory that you complete it. So if you do leave that blank, then your form will still be processed. So if you leave box 2C blank, then it will still be processed. So in this example, then the total pensionable pay is £72,000 for our GP. They already had, you can see the amount into a deducted, but 12.5% of the £72,000 was more than they actually had deducted through payroll. So there is, in this scenario, a shortfall of £250. If you only had one salaried role in 23-24 and did not do any solo work or any locum work that you pensioned, then row 6 will auto-populate on your form with the same figures as row 2. Box 7 only needs to be completed if you had any additional pension contributions in 23-24, and row 8 needs to be completed if you had added years. If you did any solo work for an out of hours provider, or you were solo as a clinical lead or board member for an ICB, or as an appraiser for NHS England, then you need to record the pensionable pay from this role in box 3, and then you enter the employee contributions that have been paid for this in relation to this role by the provider in box 3A. Now the figure from your month 12 payslip or your annual solo form for employee contributions for the year should match what you can see on PCSE Online on your employee contribution statement. If you had more than one solo role, so perhaps you worked for an out of hours provider and you were also a GP appraiser, then you would complete the additional solo row 4. So both employments need to be declared separately. Once you have declared your employments and entered the contributions that have already been paid in box 3A, if the tier rate has been selected, then the difference will populate in box 3B. So that's the difference between what the provider has paid over for you and what is actually due based on your employee tier rate times your pensionable pay. And we'll come back to talk a little bit more about overpayments and underpayments a little bit later on. But in this example, then we can see that exactly the right tier rate has been used because the £946.08 that has been paid in box 3A, the result of that is there is no difference in column 3B to be resolved. Again, if you have done any locum work, then your locum income needs to be entered in box 5, and your contributions, the employee contributions that you have paid via the locum A and B forms and the payments to NHS England for the year need to be entered in box 5A, and again that difference will be calculated for you in box 5B. So if our GP had paid at a different tier rate than they should have done for the year, then the figure in box 5B would tell us if we have an under or an overpayment. But again, I'll come back to locum shortfalls and overpayments a bit later on. So if you have recorded multiple practitioner roles, then box or row 6, the boxes in row 6 will populate with the total of everything that's been entered in rows 1 to 5. Always double check the tier rate that you have selected is correct based on your total pensionable pay that has been calculated in box 6, so we can see just over 92,000 here, 92,208 in this example, which takes our GP now into the 13.5% bracket because they're well over the 75,600. That is the threshold for 13.5 in 23-24. If you had any maternity or paternity or adoption or sick leave in 23-24, so authorised leave, you need to complete the authorised leave tab of the Type 2 form. So you will have already selected yes to the question in the personal details tab at the start of the form, and now we complete this authorised leave tab. So in box 1, then you enter the actual pay you received for the salaried role in the year, and then in box 1A you enter the annual pay that you were in receipt of immediately before the period of leave started. If you have multiple salaried roles in the year, then you need to declare each of them on a separate row. The box numbers are a little bit confusing because they don't directly correlate with the previous page, but you just complete a separate row for each of your salaried roles, and then they will total at the bottom if you've had more than one. You are deemed to have earned at the same rate during the period of leave as before the leave commenced. So this means that the full pay before the leave commenced, the full annual pay before the leave commenced, is used to determine the tier rate. So you pay that same tier rate in terms of calculating the contributions, but the contributions are calculated based on the pay that you actually receive. The practice pays the employer contributions on the full employer pay, and if you are contributing towards added years or additional pension or ERBO, then the full unreduced pay is used to calculate the annual contributions or the additional contributions as well. So in this example, our GP had an annual income of £72,000 was what they were on before they had their period of authorised leave. So the tier rate for the year is calculated based on that £72,000, but the actual pay that they took home was £46,500, so they will pay their employee contributions will be calculated based on the tier rate that matches £72,000 but times or multiplied by the 46,500. That is then the form completed. You need to go to the declaration tab, make sure you sign and date the form, and then you submit it to PCSE.